The blade went in clean. Too clean. For a moment I felt no pain at all, only pressure inside my chest, followed by warmth spreading outward and then everything fading into silence. The hero spoke softly behind me, his voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "Eirina, for the peace of the Empire, please shine one last time." His hand did not shake as he held the sword through me. I looked down at the holy blade piercing my chest. Light spilled from the wound, gentle and radiant, almost beautiful. That sacred glow once meant salvation to others, but now it felt hollow and unbearable. Snow beneath my feet turned red as my blood spread outward. I did not resist. I did not scream. Somewhere deep inside, I had always known this was how my story would end. I understood too late that the saint was never meant to live a life of her own. She was meant to be used, drained, and finally discarded. A miracle only mattered as long as others could consume it. I let out a slow breath and whispered, "I see." The hero murmured an apology, but it carried no weight. It never had. Darkness swallowed everything before I could say anything more. It did not end. I no longer felt my body, nor the cold, nor pain, nor breath, yet something remained. A thin awareness stretched across nothing, as if I had been left behind. The world moved on without me, but I lingered. I could not move or speak. I could only observe distant sounds and shifting echoes that no longer belonged to the living. Voices drifted past me as if from far away. Someone said, "Deliver the body. The abyss demands purity." Another voice replied, "What a waste." I followed without knowing how, or perhaps something deeper was pulling me downward. Time lost meaning. I do not know how long I stayed like that. It was long enough to watch, long enough to learn, and long enough to understand that death was not the end. The abyss was not empty or silent. It was a kingdom that devoured itself endlessly. I saw creatures tear each other apart, fighting for scraps that never lasted long. I heard names whispered again and again. Some were spoken with fear, others with hatred. One name remained clear in my memory. Valek. I saw him once. Collapsed and screaming beneath his wing. Not everything was clear. Many things felt broken, like fragments of a dream slipping apart. But some truths remained sharp. The abyss was starving, and something was draining it. Once, only once, I felt something looking back at me. It was not looking at my body or the world around me. It was looking directly at me. The presence did not fade. It stayed and watched. I could not move or breathe or even understand what I was anymore, yet somehow it knew I was there. The presence drew closer, slow and unhurried, as if time meant nothing. Something brushed against me, not my body, but something deeper that I could not name. A voice spoke softly, carrying quiet amusement. The Demon Queen said, "Still here?" Her tone was curious, almost entertained. As if I was something unexpected, silence followed, but she continued after a brief pause. The Demon Queen said, "I thought they would break you." "They always do." Her voice was calm, as if stating a simple truth. I could not answer. I did not even know if I existed enough to respond. Another pause stretched longer than the last before she spoke again. The Demon Queen lowered her voice slightly and said, "Next time, try something different. Take instead of giving." The words settled into me before I could understand them. The presence lingered for a moment, as if waiting for something. Then it withdrew, and I was alone again in the endless silence. Everything shattered suddenly. Light returned along with voices and warmth. My lungs burned as air rushed back into them, and my body trembled as sensation returned all at once. A priest's voice echoed nearby. "The ritual will begin shortly." The cathedral came into view along with the altar and the crowd. I was back at the moment everything began. For a brief moment, fear gripped my chest. My body remembered dying and my mind remembered watching. Then I laughed quietly, the sound unfamiliar even to myself. "I remember," I said softly. The staff rested in my hand, warm and steady. Before I had never questioned it because the light wrapped around my thoughts, soft and absolute. Now those chains were gone. I tightened my grip and crushed the staff in my hand. The sound echoed through the cathedral, drawing gasps from every direction. I did not look at them. I looked at the rift that led to the abyss. This time, I understood what it was and what it could give me. I spoke calmly and said, "The light is too bright. I think darkness suits me better." Before anyone could react, I stepped forward and jumped into the abyss. The fall should have killed me, but it did not. The air thickened as I descended, turning cold and heavy. When I landed, the ground beneath me felt brittle instead of solid. The smell reached me immediately. Rot, blood, and sulfur filled the air. It was exactly as I remembered, not perfectly, but enough to feel familiar. Movement followed quickly. Creatures gathered around me, crawling and shifting with too many limbs and too many eyes. They did not hesitate. One stepped forward, larger and slower than the rest. I did not recognize its form clearly, but I remembered its weakness. I spoke calmly and said, "Valek." The creature froze instantly, its body stiffening in disbelief. Valek growled and asked, "What are you?" I tilted my head slightly and replied, "Your left wing, 3 inches down." "It still hurts, doesn't it?" Silence followed as the creatures hesitated. Valek asked again, "How do you know that?" I did not answer, because I did not know everything. But I knew enough. I met its gaze and said, "Take me to her." After a long pause, Valak lowered its head and obeyed. The doors closed behind me with a heavy final sound. Firelight flickered across the hall, casting long shadows that seemed alive. I felt her before I saw her. That same presence from before, the one that had spoken to me when I was nothing. The Demon Queen spoke from behind me, her voice soft and amused. "Saint, you do not smell like a corpse." A cold finger lifted my chin gently. She studied me and added, "You smell aware." My breath caught for a moment before I steadied it again. I met her gaze and said, "I have seen this place before." She tightened her grip slightly and repeated, "Seen?" I answered calmly, "From the other side." Silence followed, but this time it carried interest. I continued, "You have been starving. Your kingdom is being drained, not defeated." Her fingers pressed slightly into my skin. The Demon Queen asked quietly, "And how do you know this?" I replied, "I listened, I watched, and I remembered." A slow smile appeared on her face. She said, "You are dangerous." Her finger traced the blood at my throat. I held her gaze and said, "Then use me." She paused briefly, then laughed softly and said, "Prove it." 3 days passed quickly. 7 mines stopped producing, and not a single shipment reached the Empire. Their system relied on trust, and I broke it. Weapons failed first, followed by armor and supplies. Reports spread rapidly, but the damage had already taken hold. Behind me, the Demon Queen watched everything. She leaned closer and said, "You are shaking." I replied calmly, "I am not." She paused briefly before saying, "Then you are enjoying this." I exhaled slowly and said, "Focus." She answered softly, "I am." Her hand rested lightly against my back. A quiet reminder that I was never alone in control. The hero arrived too late. He stepped forward and called out, "Eirina, I am here to bring you back." I did not move. Behind me, the Demon Queen placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "He thinks you are leaving." I asked quietly, "Am I?" The Demon Queen replied, "Try." I looked at him and said, "No." The hero shook his head and said, "You are being controlled." I laughed softly and said, "Is that what you tell yourself?" He reached for his sword, but it did not move. I explained calmly, "That blade was forged with my life." "Did you think it would obey you?" His expression broke as he realized the truth. I looked at him and said, "You took everything from me. Now I'm taking it back." It ended quietly. The Empire did not burn. It simply stopped. The hero lived, and that was enough for him to understand what he had lost. For a moment, everything was still. I exhaled softly and said, "Finished." The Demon Queen touched my throat again and asked, "You think so?" I did not turn and replied, "Is it not?" She stepped closer and said, "You won." Her fingers traced my pulse before she added, Now you stay. I felt something tighten in my chest and asked, why? She answered, you chose this place. I stayed silent for a moment before asking, what do you want? She placed her hand over my heartbeat and said, you. I asked quietly, and if I refuse? She replied, I will find you, and this time I will not let you drift again. My breath caught as I realized the meaning. I said you knew. She smiled faintly and replied, I wondered. She leaned closer and said softly, stay. It was not a command or a threat, but something deeper. I answered quietly, fine. She responded just as softly, good. I was once offered to the abyss as a sacrifice. Even as a ghost, I could only watch. This time I chose to stay, and something in the abyss chose me first.
Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, please subscribe to Keiko Novel. It means a lot to me.